Good morning, good afternoon, in reality, everybody. Welcome to this new appointment of the 1 Hour with Europe webinar series. Today we are talking about the European Innovation Council, and we have the honor to have with us Keith Sequeira, which is the head of the unit for the European Innovation Council and SMEs, executive agency in the GRTD. My name is Massimo Bosuoli. I am the director of the NTNU Brussels office, and I will be the moderator or facilitator, if you want, of this appointment. And before starting, just a couple of rules of the game for the one of you which are connecting with us for the first time. You will have the possibility to challenge our speaker with your questions. Don't write them. You are going to state them directly. Just be prepared in opening your camera and microphone. To reserve your right to ask a question, just write your name in the Q&A box that you have under your screen in more or less the center should be. So just click on the Q&A, write your name, and of course, time allowing, we are going to provide you the possibility to challenge our guests. Another issue that another information I would like to give you today, the 1 Hour with Europe will be to 45 minutes with Europe, because unfortunately Keith have to leave us a little bit in advance due to another commitment. So we need to be extremely efficient also in the way you are going to ask questions. So please be short and concise. Given that, Keith, welcome. Very appreciated your presence. You are on the spotlight in the latest period, I think, at European level. The IC is considered to be a very important instrument. Moreover, 2025 calls are on the table. So I think there is many things that maybe you can share with us and you can provoke us to reflect, and maybe after it challenge you. So the floor is yours. I think you have a presentation to warm up the discussion, and then let's see how this is going to develop.
Well, many thanks, Massimo, for this invitation. Great pleasure to be here. Maybe I start with just some kind of broad outlines of the European Innovation Council, what we're doing, where we're trying to get to, and then let's leave lots of time for the discussion and the questions. So as you said, I've been there from the beginning of the European Innovation Council. It started as an idea in around 2017. And it started with the idea that in the framework program at the time, this was the Horizon 2020 program, we had a great program for fundamental research with the ERC. We had a great program for collaborative projects with industry, universities, researchers. But what we were missing is something that really was targeting disruptive, fast-moving innovation. And also all of these new companies, the startups. So that's where we set out. And as you've said, this has become very, very relevant in the context that we are. So if I can move to the next slide. So just some basics. It's a 10 billion program, a big novelty in the current Horizon Europe program. We did have a pilot phase to get a bit of experience. It's targeting breakthrough technologies, disruptive innovations, unexpected things, intersectoral things, and it's really focusing on getting these to market and scaling them up and really getting European leadership in novel technologies. We think it's quite unique in the world. It covers the full level of technology readiness. We go from very fundamental research, and we try and follow that all the way into successful companies. So it's an innovation program, but it's very much for researchers who want to do research on new technologies and see how that can be developed. We stole a few ideas from the European Research Council. So we have a board of advisors that are representing entrepreneurs, investors, researchers. If I give a Norwegian example, we have Anita Korntrassef, who used to be the CEO of Innovation Norway and previously in Hewlett-Packard, who's on our board. Then we looked at the experience around the world, and in particular, the DARPA model, the ARPA model in the US. And we've been starting to build this, and we've recruited program managers as experts in their field to really look at the content, the strategy, where are the emerging technologies that we can bet on. We have a dedicated agency that we set up, the EIC and SME Executive Agency, to manage most of the program. But one of the big novelties has been to introduce an equity fund. So we invest in early stage companies with high technology risk, and we've set up a dedicated fund to do that. And we have the European Investment Bank involved as an advisor to that fund. So if I take the next slide to see what this looks like in terms of innovator's journey. I mean, here you see that we start off with the Pathfinder scheme. So this is for early stage research. It's the successor of the future and emerging technologies. And that's very much what it's trying to do, to identify where are the new technologies coming from the research base. We give grants of up to 4 million euros, mostly for collaborative projects. A lot of this is open, any technology, any area. But then we also have the program managers that are setting specific challenges, and the program managers in those areas are quite hands-on in managing and working with the consortia in the various projects. Something that's been very new that we introduced is the EIC transition. And the idea here is that we had a lot of fantastic results, but it's quite hard work to turn that into an innovation. You know, what is the market? Is the technology really robust? And one of the things we did at the beginning is that we met with the European Research Council and we said, what do you need for an innovation program? And they said, we have a proof of concept scheme for the ERC, but we need something that follows up on that. So the EIC transition is a follow-up funding for ERC proof of concept, for the Pathfinder and the future and emerging technologies. But a big novelty we introduced is it's now a follow-up for any result achieved in a collaborative project. So in Pillar 2 of Horizon, or also the societal challenges, industrial leadership. It needs to be a small consortia, or it can be an individual small company or university or research team. And then we have the accelerator, which is our company scheme. It supports individual companies. It gives grants, but it also gives equity investments. And that is to de-risk the technology, but also encourage other investors to invest in these early stage companies. And one of the big novelties we've introduced in 2025 is the STEP call. So STEP stands for Strategic Technologies for Europe platform. It's being introduced across a range of EU funding programs. It's all focused on these core areas of technology, digital deep tech, biotech, clean tech. And in the EIC, what we're doing is for companies in these areas, we are offering larger investments up to 30 million euros, because we think a lot of these technologies, they have major investment needs, while the risks in areas like quantum or space or biotech still remain quite high for the financial system. Now, all of this is not just about funding. We have a whole set of what we call our business acceleration services. So we provide coaches for the projects, mentors. We link to global partners, access to trade fairs, to events around the world, access to ecosystems across Europe, and a platform where we bring together all of the projects, the investors, the coaches, everyone involved in the EIC. And then we try and recognize achievements in innovation. So we have two main prizes, the Women Innovators Prize and the Capital of Innovation, which currently I think is Turin or Torino, and was Lisbon last year, to really recognize cities that are making a big impact. So that's a bit what it looks like. If I move to the next slide to give you a snapshot of what we've done. The EIC fund has been very successful. It's invested, and this is money paid out, over 1 billion euros now. Over 250 startups across Europe. It's actually one of the biggest deep tech investment funds anywhere in Europe. It co-invests with other investors, and we've seen that it leverages more than 3 times the amount coming from other investors. And we've started to try and structure this in something we've called the Trusted Investor Network, where we have 78 other leading investors, mostly private investors, who are also interested in deep tech and scaling up companies in Europe. So the STEP call, which is very much about trying to increase this investment, We have put 300 million euros this year. We plan to continue this in 26-27 to have close to 1 billion euros. And you'll see politically, this is very important. There's a big emphasis now on scaling up companies. We think in Europe we have lots of fantastic startups, but where we are weak is really scaling these up into global companies in Europe. We've got a fantastic pipeline of research projects, transition projects in all areas of technology. Something we've been doing is seeing what can we understand from this about where the new technologies are going to be. And we published in December what we call the Emerging Technology Report, which was an analysis of all the trends that we see coming out of this early stage research that we think could have potential big impacts in the future. On the program managers, we have been recruiting several generations. We had a new cohort that started in the end of last year, including our first program manager in artificial intelligence, for example. And then I'll say a word about the future in a minute, because we already see that there are some of the political statements being made. To give you an idea in the next slide about the EIC fund, this shows you the kind of sectors that the fund is investing in. If I can move to the next slide. You see we have a lot of investments in the healthcare area. Some of this is because in COVID times there was a big push on medtech and health, but we have growing portfolios in a lot of the digital areas, a lot of clean tech, mobility, space. So this is a very sort of dynamic picture. And to give you an example, we took part in the funding round for Alice and Bob, which is one of, we hope, Europe's leading quantum companies. And that was a 100 million funding round that was announced a couple of weeks ago. So if we then move to the next point to give you an idea of the future. Firstly, there's been a series of major reports, of which I think the most important is by Mario Draghi, who really put the spotlight on the kind of innovation that the EIC supports. So novel technologies and scaling up companies, and really frame this as an existential threat for Europe. This then went into the guidelines for the new commission with a statement from President von der Leyen that for the future, which is the current commissioners until nearly 2030, one of the tasks is to see how to expand both the European Research Council and the European Innovation Council. And this was given as an explicit mandate to Commissioner Zaharieva, who started in November as a commissioner with the title of Startups, Innovation and Research. So just to conclude on this, we're doing a lot of work now about where we go in the future. And we've already got some advice coming from the EIC board. And just to give you the highlights of what the EIC board, these are the independent advisors, have been advising us, if we can look at the next slide. So they want us to go more in the direction of the ARPA, to give more authority to the program managers to allow risk-taking. Secondly, to build on the success of the EIC fund. They're watching very carefully the STEP call to see if we can use this to really scale up companies. They think we can do more on simplification to speed up processes, simplify processes. We have some interesting schemes to bring together the EIC with national and regional ecosystems. We have something we call the plug-in scheme, where national programs can pre-select companies to come into the EIC. We have a scheme where the structural funds can be transferred to the EIC to be implemented for companies in that country or region. We have a seal of excellence that we certify excellent companies to help national or regional programs to support. And the board is also encouraging us to keep trying new things. Innovation is a fast-moving field, so we'll look at some new things. And to give you an example of a new thing that we are just launching now is an internship scheme where we are offering to researchers in ERC or Pathfinder or Marie Skłodowska-Curie an opportunity to spend 3 months, 6 months in a deep tech startup, so they get an experience of what is this like? Is this a future career for them? So they get direct experience of what it's like working in the innovation space. So I hope that's a kind of useful overview and introduction, and look forward very much to the discussion.
Thank you very much, Keith, for this food for thought, I would say, providing already some interesting provocations. For the one which have connected after my explanation, should you like to challenge Keith? Keith will be with us until 2:45. So today we have a 45 minutes with Europe appointment. Please reserve your right to intervene by putting your name in the Q&A box. Just put your name, don't write questions. We are going to ask you to open the camera and the microphone. Before giving space to the audience, I noticed I took some notes that attract my attention. First of all, a personal comment. I was reflecting on the fact, and this came to my attention when you listed it, that the Zahariyeva mandate is startups, innovation, and research. So in order of importance.
I wouldn't read too much into the order, but what I would read into it is startups. We've never had a commission with the word startups. In fact, she's very interested in scale-ups as well. But this is a bit of a difference, but I think I wouldn't want to choose which is most important.
This was my initial constructive provocation. And I also noticed the big success that you got for the EIC fund. Basically, I suspect you are generating revenues or return, and I suspect you're going to reinvest the revenues that in further support to startup companies and so on. We got a little, I mean, there are pros and cons, because it's pretty funny that the public initiative is generating revenue. So how you're handling it, and then you see this to be managed in the future, because I've heard some criticism behind it. What is the situation?
No, I think the EIC fund has been a super interesting experience. It's a whole new area for the Commission. We've not been doing these things before. We live very much in the grant world. But we thought if we're serious about innovation, we can't keep with grants. There was a lot of skepticism when we started with the EIC fund, and we had, to be honest, quite some delays in getting it going. It was quite a difficult thing to set up. But some of the private funders said this is a bad idea. What is the public doing investing in companies? We've seen a real change in this. The private investors are super keen now on the EIC, and what they see is that we are doing a hugely thorough job in selecting, the most promising companies across Europe, and it's an excellence-based approach, like the ERC. And we've received, well over 10,000 applications from startups, of which we've selected around 500. And we have at least 12 experts looking at every single one. So that's a big value. We give a grant to the companies, which is a big value, and we have a very thorough due diligence and investment process. So actually, in this area of emerging technologies, it's very hard to invest. You need a lot of knowledge, and having a public body at European level like the EIC that's investing a lot to select the best companies. Now, we don't expect to get fast returns on the EIC investments. I mean, these are mostly early stage companies that will take a long time to generate, big returns. If you look at an area like quantum that we have a lot of companies in, it's going to be quite some time before those have a commercial market. The technology is really working well. There's a lot of uncertainty about the technology. So you are right. We are reinvesting the money that comes back. There's been a few early cases where companies have been acquired and we've sold our shares, but we expect this really to be a long-term endeavor, and that we will be investing for 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. It has been, as I said, it's something that the private market finds very difficult to do. And this was our experience before, because we did a lot of work with the European Investment Fund to top up the funding of private venture capital, but we found that they find it difficult to invest in these early stage spin-outs from universities with very novel technologies that are hard to understand. So we think it brings a big value. And by doing it, we think the stories we get of companies that have spent a long time, they can't raise any funding, when we support them with the EIC, suddenly they become attractive to private investors, and it's much easier for them to raise. So we see it has a big signaling effect on the market as well.
So you take some more calculated investment risk than a normal investor to some extent.
We do, yes, but we also want to attract other investors. So we also want these companies to be successful.
Yeah.
And of course, if they are successful, it's very good that we can recycle this money in new companies, because of course, when we spend grants, we never get any money back, even if the company and the technology is very successful. So it's also a way that we can recycle the money into new innovations and new companies.
Absolutely. Very interesting. My last question, and then we open the microphone, Nicolas Villacorta. So Nicolas, be ready to intervene as soon as I call you in place. I was particularly attracted by the new STEP instrument that is a novelty of the Work Program 2025. And I was questioning myself if, given the raising importance of the STEP approach, if we are going to have this also somehow influencing the way we are going to choose or identify the priorities for the next framework program 10, where the EIC looks to be particularly well positioned, apparently, according to the rumors, the reports, the appreciation from the people and so on. So, your opinion, is the STEP going to be a way of working also in the next framework program? And how do you see the EIC in the context of the next framework program?
So maybe it's to start with, STEP is not just about the framework program. And this was one of the novelties, that we would try and align priorities. It goes across 11 EU programs. So things like the Digital Europe program, the Innovation Fund in climate, but it also goes to the structural funds. And the idea of this is that we can really align funding from different instruments. So under the EIC, we will give something that is called the STEP seal or the sovereignty seal. And if a member state also wants to support that company, they would get certain things that they can use the structural funds for. So this is a novelty, and it is one that we're looking whether we can continue in the next program, with the idea that there can be, rather than having lots of programs, each with its own priorities, that there can be a more coordinated approach with priorities aligned between EU programs and the decentralized programs that are run through the structural funds. But then the other thing we've done in the EIC is really these larger investments. And I think we see that this is a big priority for the future. If we look at the market data compared to the US, where we underperform on venture capital, this gets worse and worse the bigger the investments are. And if we look at the source of the capital, for smaller investments, it's mostly European capital. By the time we get to the big investments, the majority of the money is coming from the US and Asia. And that puts certain risks on what will happen to these companies. Will they relocate? Will they be acquired? So the other thing that we will look for the future, building on the experience of STEP, is this market gap in the larger investments in Europe.
Okay, very interesting. So, Nicolas, we are waiting for your question. I hope you have been upgraded. Otherwise, we are going to upgrade you as panelist in 1 second. Just, yeah, it's coming. Okay, just accept our invitation. Yes, the floor is yours, Nicolas. Just introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. Nicolas Villacorta, I'm the delegate for Helmholtz Matter in Brussels. And we have heard that for the future, the EIC Pathfinder Open might receive lesser support compared to the challenges. Are we going to see in the future just challenges in the EIC Pathfinder?
So this is not our immediate plan. What we have in Horizon Europe is, in the legal base, the majority of the funding should go to Pathfinder Open. Pathfinder Open is extremely popular. It's oversubscribed. I mean, our difficulty is the success rate is very low for the Pathfinder Open. So we are looking if there's ways that we can boost the budget. So what we're talking about at the moment is to improve the approach of challenges, to see how we can learn from DARPA and ARPA and some of these other experiences. But we're not talking about getting rid of Pathfinder Open and putting all of the funding into Pathfinder Challenges. For the future, we'll see. But if I can give a personal opinion on this, I think what we see is the open calls under both Pathfinder and Accelerator are extremely important to really capture novel things. And I know this is the position a lot of us have, that we really need to preserve. Yes, we need some strategic prioritization, but we also need the strong bottom-up programs. I mean, ERC, absolutely, but we would like to keep this in the EIC as well.
Thanks.
Yeah. Next one in our list of questions is Ahmed Vakar. Ahmed, we are going to upgrade you in 1 second. Give us the time, the technical time to give you the... There you are. Please open your microphone as soon as ready and introduce yourself.
Hello, can you see me?
Yeah, we hear you and we see you.
Okay, good afternoon. It's Vakar here from the Research Council of Norway. I'm a delegate in the EIC EIE Program Committee from Norway. Thanks for your presentation. My question is, I think I wrote that in the chat as well, but it's about, you mentioned that in the EIC is it inspired from the DARPA and ARPA model, but I think in the Drag it's mentioned that it's not really, it's far from the DARPA, the level of the DARPA and its scale. So are we going in the same direction in the next MFF? That's first one. The second one, I think there's a lot of discussion on the synergies between ERC and the EIC. So I think, and it's about disruptive type of projects. So Pathfinder, can this be a co-ownership between EIC and ERC in the future?
Okay, so on the, I guess, the comparison with DARPA, I mean, there's certain things that we looked at several years ago and we've introduced. So the program managers, and the program managers, you know, they, for example, they are members, they chair the evaluation committee. So we look at portfolios of projects. So they have real influence over the selection of projects. Now, if you compare with DARPA, there's some obvious differences. I mean, last time I looked, the annual budget of DARPA was $3 billion a year, whereas the Pathfinder, we're around 300 million euros. So, and of course, we're covering a wider range of technologies. Although, I mean, DARPA does a lot of technologies. They do vaccines, all sorts of things, which are not obviously military. And they have far more program managers than we have. So what we're doing now is seeing how we can sharpen this type of approach. So, for example, you know, DARPA often has the link with procurement. There's a kind of military need. So can we have some of the EIC challenges that have a link with procurement with a need that is unmet? So these are kinds of things that we're looking at now. But I think what is also not recognized is that I would say in many ways the EIC is better than DARPA. DARPA has no equivalent of the accelerator. They don't do equity investments. They can't follow up on research results on the next steps. And I think the other thing that we're very conscious of is that DARPA is working in a US context and we're working in a European context. So we're not looking for a cut and paste anyway. But there are certain things that we think we can really learn from and we can go a bit further. So this is a bit the discussion at the moment. On the ERC, as I said, I think our impression is that this pipeline from the ERC to the EIC is working very well. And in fact, we have a nice link with the proof of concept, which is, you know, the first small step for an innovation journey that we are then able to take over from the EIC. I think it's also good because, as you know, the ERC, and I've been responsible for the ERC in the cabinet before, they, you know, it's really about knowledge for knowledge's sake. The ERC quite rightly does not want to start being involved in innovation processes. So it's for us, that's extremely good because innovation is where we come in. Overall, we see the interaction, the connections with the ERC to be very good. As I mentioned, I think half of the transition is coming from the ERC pipeline. The ERC did an interesting report where they identified a whole bunch of EIC accelerator companies where the research and they tracked back to ERC projects. So we'll look at how we can improve this in future. But overall, our impression is that this link with the ERC is going pretty well.
Thank you.
Yeah,
we have French in Brussels, Carl Stockel. Carl, you are going to be upgraded in 1 second. So to put your question, there you are.
Hello, do you hear me?
Yourself, Carl.
Yeah, so hello, I'm Carl Stöckel. I'm Brussels representative of Aix-Marseille University in the south of France. Thank you very much, Keith, for the presentation. Thank you very much to Massimo and NTNU for the insightful initiative of this 1 hour with Europe event. You've mentioned the links, the very strong link to the ERC, especially with the transition scheme. Do you foresee for the next programming period, the FP10, do you foresee stronger links to collaborative projects or collaborative scheme, namely the Pillar 2 today, to seize the high potential of a collaboration within the framework program, in particular the IP, the data, and the results, in particular in innovation actions of Pillar 2? And also, do you foresee stronger links with the EIT knowledge and innovation communities, in particular the activities in the business creation, the support for startups? Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Carl. I don't have a crystal ball to know what will be in the next program, but what I can tell you is that we're doing quite a lot of this already, with the hope that we can build on it in the future. So as I mentioned, a novelty that we introduced in 2024 was to open the transition to results from Pillar 2. Now, we had a reasonable response. I think about 1/3 of the applications came from Pillar 2. But we also think this opportunity is not well enough known for the projects, the universities. So this is something that we would like to promote more, because we see that in Pillar 2, it is important to have a mechanism to follow up the results and not just have an approach where, once the project's finished and that's the end of it. We're also doing some other things. We've started looking at providing some of the business acceleration services, some of the coaching, mentoring, matchmaking with investors to Pillar 2. We're doing a bit of experiment in the space area with some of the projects there, because we think a lot of these services could be very relevant. By the way, we do this with the ERC, some of like the venturing boot camps we offer to ERC projects as well. And we're doing this with the EIT. So with the EIT, we had a memorandum of understanding that's given us a kind of roadmap. So we do provide some of our business acceleration services either jointly, or we pay for the knowledge and innovation communities to provide advice to the EIC projects. We've done a joint prize. I mentioned the Women Innovators Prize. We now do that jointly with the EIT. And we've been developing this fast track scheme where the EIT, the knowledge and innovation communities, can pre-select projects from their innovation programs to come to the EIC accelerator, which in some kicks has worked reasonably well, in other kicks not so well. We have a very particular profile in the EIC. We're looking for very novel technologies that really have a scale-up potential, and where the risk profile makes it quite hard to finance from the market. And some of the kicks, I think in health, for example, this fits very well with the kinds of startups they have, and in other areas a bit less so. So we've been doing a lot to work with the EIT, and we'll keep going on this, and then we'll see what the situation is for the next programs. But as you've heard before, I mean, the direction of travel is that we try and avoid these kind of independent programs all doing their own things in an uncoordinated way, and that we can have much more of this in the future.
Thank you. It's nice to know, because the Commission is such a big animal that I understand that it's complicated to keep everything in a coordinated and aligned way. We have another good friend of this office, which is Richard Duff. So Richard, very happy to get your question. Just the time to upgrade you to panelist. Richard, the floor is yours. Just open your camera and mic.
Yep. Hello. Can you hear me? Hello.
Perfectly. Good
Thanks
morning.
very much, Massimo, and thanks, Keith. It's good to see you again. I've just got two questions, probably less technical. The first one, it's obvious that the EIC has got a very good press. It's now in the with the the competitiveness compass and Draghi. So you will get more money, it's logically. I think you would be pleased about that. But could you just have one first question is, where will the money come from? You're the winner. Who might be the loser in this big battle? And the second question I have, which is pretty obvious, I suppose, as a friend of smart specialization, will the EIC have a place-based dimension at all? And can it or will it link with smart specialization strategy priorities? And I'm happy if you say no, not at all. That would be, just clarity on that. Whether it could have a link into the sort of future smart specialization strategies, and particularly interregional collaboration around value chains, for example. Thank you.
First challenging question.
Well, yes, I mean, I don't know the answer to the first question, of course, Richard, but very nice to see you, by the way. But I would say that I think no one is taking any budget increases anywhere for granted. I mean, I don't think anyone should be underestimate how difficult the budget discussions will be. If I give you an example, in the midterm review of the MFF, the Commission proposed an extra 2.7 billion for the EIC in order to implement STEP. Some of that was recycled money or using money, and some of it was fresh money. The result of the negotiations with the member states is that we ended up with a 2.2 billion cut to Horizon Europe, of which some of that cut is going to the EIC. It's pretty much pro rata across the program. So it shows, when we had the political discussion, everyone said, yes, of course, this is very important. But when it came to the budget, it's very difficult. So, I mean, I think the thing here is, leaving aside EIC, ERC, collaborative research, we really need to increase the budget for research and innovation, and then we can see how best to use it. On the kind of regional side and the place-based, I mean, the EIC is geographically blind. I mean, we try really to ensure equal treatment if a company applies from Stockholm or from Romania or Israel, the associated countries as well. But what I think, we're looking at how we can link more with the structural funds. We have all of these seals of excellence. We have the possibility of transfers. We have the first transfers from Lithuania. That for us is fantastic, because before that we only had 1 or 2 startups from Lithuania, but the Lithuanian government decided to transfer money, and then we said, okay, we invest in more Lithuanian startups. So this is something that we think can be really useful. And then the other thing is that we think with the EIC, we can actually extract a lot more data and intelligence. We see, as I mentioned, we had over 10,000 startups applying We're starting to interrogate that data. When you're an investor in the company, you get a lot of information about that company. And of course, we have to be careful about commercial confidentiality. So what we would really like to do as well is to use this information in a way that's useful. I mean, I mentioned the emerging technology report, which is one example, but also to be useful for regional local authorities to help them with their smart specialization thinking and intelligence.
Good. We are entering the last 5 minutes and we still have quite a number of questions to be answered. So I apologize in advance for the one we will not be capable to keep. The next one in line is Rasmus Mork.
If we can get Dimitri Kourpakis, I saw him.
We can get it. We can get it.
If he's still there. He is my previous boss.
Absolutely. This is the one I was telling you. Rasmus, the floor is yours. Introduce yourself.
Thank you. My name is Rasmus Mørk. I work for the Greater Copenhagen EU office. Thank you for a very good initiative. So I have a question about, is it really necessary to blend grant and equity? What has been the experience of this? I'm asking because there's some experiences of increased bureaucracy, of having to do both at the same time. Also, perhaps in the future, equity could be financed via other means, loans, for example, than grants. And it seems now you're ramping up equity on the expense of grants. So how do you see this? What's been the experience with blended finance, and how do you see the future? Thank you.
Okay, so when we started with blended finance in the pilot, we didn't know what should be the balance between grants and equity. So the decision we took at the time was to leave it to the demand. So we said to companies, you can apply for a grant or you can apply for blended finance. And it was actually a bit of a surprise to us, the popularity of the equity. I think at the beginning we thought maybe 100 million in the pilot. In the end, it was closer to 600 million. So this has been very much what we've seen in terms of the demand, and we've seen that this is relatively stable. Then what we've also seen is that the way to manage equity needs to be a lot more dynamic than the grants. So, for example, when a company may not want the equity immediately because they are not at the stage where they want to raise another funding round. So what we've done from last year is to be much more flexible with the equity and to say, it doesn't have to be immediate. If it is immediate, we can go quite fast now. But if the company says, okay, we will be doing a fundraising in 6 months or a year, then we will say, okay, we will look at this company from the investment, from the EIC fund when the company is ready. Now, we do loan financing. So if a company needs financing and there's not an investment round, we do convertible loans that will convert into equity in a subsequent round. So we've had some experience of that. And then the last point you mentioned, which is an important one, is whether we can simplify the decision making, because we have a process to select the company, and then we have another process for the investment in the company. Now, some of that is because when you do an investment, there are certain things. We've set up the EIC fund as a private entity under Luxembourg law, and that has to comply with the requirements of private law for investments. And that applies to things like the due diligence, which is done on the company. So there are certain things that you have to do for the investment. It is a certain amount of bureaucracy, but that will be something that any investor will require. But what we are doing is seeing, as I said, if there's ways we can streamline this so that we have closer coordination between the decision making. We reduce the burdens on companies having to provide information. But it's also important that we keep this flexibility. I think that the equity can be used at the time where it's really needed by the company, which may be not completely synchronized with the grant. So we're looking at this. I mean, in terms of the shift to equity, this is a little bit that we really wanted to have more impact on scale up. And, if we're giving 30 million euros, we don't think it's a good idea to give 30 million euros as a grant. We really want the market discipline. We want to attract other investors. So actually the grant amount has been staying about the same. We haven't decreased that. But because we have this serious problem in Europe on the scaling up, there has been an emphasis, and STEP is an example, to see what we can do with equity, where we see very high demand as well.
Last question we take from one of our best followers, Dimitri Korbakis. Dimitri, we are promoting you to panelist, and I know there is also some previous relationship among you two. You are online, Dimitri. Good afternoon.
Oh, hello. Thank you very much for giving me the floor. And hello, Keith. Good to see you again. I understand you are, of course, you have a focus on startups, which is a very important objective for Europe. But I understand also we have now a renewed focus on industrial policy. And so my question is, could the EIC do something for modernizing more European companies, and how this could be better accomplished? Because imagine we have a huge population of startups. This would be a great objective and a great target, but then would it be enough for achieving our objectives? As a union, we live in strange times, and every day brings a new surprise. And so we need to make sure our companies can stand the challenges. So if you have something to add on this, that would be great. Thank you.
Many thanks, Dimitri. And maybe I sort of I know there's a lot of other questions, but Dimitri was my first boss in the European Commission when I started, and in fact when we started on regional innovation. This was, so I hope you don't mind that it would be great to have this discussion. And it's a great question from you, Dimitri. We're looking at this very much. Now, when we say we focus on startups, we're actually a bit broader than that. So it has to be an SME. Most of them are startups, around 5-10 years. But I can give the example of, in fact, it's a Norwegian company. It's over 100 years old, doing the linings for gas. But then they made a real pivot to do a new technology to allow them to move into hydrogen. So actually, I think there's a big potential. We have some of this of SMEs that have been there for a long time that need to pivot into new technologies. And we all know that Nokia was a sewing machine company for 100 years before it moved into. So we have some of these in the EIC, but this could be very important. And then the other thing which we'd really like to work on is a lot of big industry, they need transformative technologies, and they're not very good often at developing them in-house. So we're doing a lot to try and bring, radical solutions to the corporates. We have these things we call the EIC Corporate Days, where we bring a cohort of the startups that could be potential solutions for greening the company or transitioning to electrification, all of these areas. And it's been very much welcomed by the big corporates, because otherwise, they have hundreds of thousands of startups across Europe, and it's quite hard for them to locate the ones. So I think this will become more important now that we see the real urgency of having major changes in European corporates. And I think European corporates have been far worse than in the US at really working with startups to bring in outside innovation into their production. So I hope we can do a lot more of this.
There is another element of strategic value that this can take, because if on one side Mario Draghi is also pushing for the need to increase the ERC funding to generate more knowledge, we know how we are weak in transforming the knowledge in innovation. So again, I suspect that what you are mentioning could also help you in this direction. Otherwise, we are just making a favor to our competitors. So given this, unfortunately, we haven't been able to take all the questions, but I registered your high interest in the topic. Maybe we can re-invite you in the near future as soon as novelties will be on the table. I would like to anticipate to you that we are working on a new edition for March. Will be another hot topic. I cannot anticipate until the speaker will confirm. but I can tell you that is related partly to EIC. Given this, thank you very much for attending this new 1 Hour with Europe appointment. The registration will be put in our YouTube. All the registered participants will receive a copy of the slides, and we look forward to meet you in the next edition. And thank you again, Keith, for your availability.
Many thanks. Thanks for all the questions as well. Apologies, we couldn't get through all of them, but very happy to continue the discussion.
Great. Have a nice day, everybody.